Good morning. I am happy to be here and to talk with you a little bit about how we can motivate our students through empathic instructional design strategies and within our courses and our program curriculum. I am Candace Freeman, and I am the Department Chair of the Medical Laboratory Technology Program at Fayetteville Technical Community College. And we work in the Health Sciences Division of the college, which is a highly technical career path. We have a lot of highly technical career paths in that division. And within those career paths, we have a lot of complicated, complex learning tasks to teach and to show mastery to. So this presentation is going to talk a little bit about how we can understand what motivates our students from an empathic perspective in a way that we can ensure their persistence and progression in our courses and in our programs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share with you my screen, and we are going to use a platform called Mentimeter. And if you have ever used Mentimeter before, you'll know exactly what I am talking about. And I'm going to, let's see here, 1 second. There we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to present this. All right, so you should be seeing a screen right now that says Motivating Students to Mastery. And screen, you will actually find a website, menti.com, and you can actually use the code 90573276 if you are following along live with me. Go to menti.com on your smartphone, mobile device, or on your computer, and you will actually enter the code 90573276, and this code will actually be on the top of each screen as we move through the presentation. All right. Okay, so our purpose for this presentation today is to provide ideas about instructional strategies that will engage our students and motivate them to persist throughout the actual length of a given course or a given instructional track or program at the community college. And the aim of this is to help you learn how to integrate effective empathic teaching and learning practices that will result in persistence of those students and progression to ultimately success or the program. So by the end of this presentation, you'll be able to outline various academic and personal challenges that students might have that could impact their performance and persistence in your course. Evaluate specific situations for the purpose of mitigating the risk of poor academic performance based on reasons that could result in our students withdrawing from our courses or our programs, which we don't want. State examples of what complex learning is associated with complex learning and align that with certain academic courses and programs. Differentiate between a part task and a whole task in relation to complex learning. And finally, you're going to learn how to implement certain performance improvement interventions that are designed specifically to engage your students in those complicated learning tasks and help them persist throughout your program. So if you're following along with me on your smartphone, if you will, give me one example of something that instructors struggle with during any given semester. Just one example. It can be, yes, engagement is definitely one. That is always a challenge for me during the semester, especially at the beginning. Communication, absolutely. We tend to, sometimes in my career, I've neglected to use as many outlets as I could to communicate with my students, and you can't enough. Retention is a big one. I have students currently right now who are struggling if they're going to progress or not. Burnout is so true, absolutely. We do a lot, and you never know what you're going to be doing until you jump in the deep end. Yep, application of concepts is challenging, especially when you try to align learning theory with what you're doing. And apathy, wow, yeah. Sometimes that burnout can lead to apathy, and attendance is a struggle too. as these are great. These are great things. Grading in a timely manner. Oh my gosh, I've got to get my grades in today. And yes, absolutely, life does happen. These are great. These are absolutely great topics. Example of something your students struggle with. What are some things that students struggle with during any semester? I'm wondering if they might be similar. So as a student myself, I struggle a lot trying to find time, trying to find a way to integrate everything I need to do within my day. So as far as from a student perspective, when you were a student, what did you struggle with? Communication. Absolutely. How many times have we emailed a professor or an instructor and waited weeks to get a response? Time management. All of my students tend to struggle with time management, and I can see that most of you are saying time management is the main thing because it's the biggest one here, and it is so true. Balance is huge because we want to find that school life balance, but I've just relegated after 7 years of being in graduate school. I know how to do that, finding the balance. Traumatic life experiences, and we all go through them and we all define trauma in a different way. And those computer skills are huge. Great topics, great topics. So just to set us up to understand why it is important for us to empathically teach our students and consider various avenues for students to go down to achieve that main goal of I did pull up our dashboards from our system dashboards from the analytics and reporting dashboard section, and I specifically looked at first-year progression and persistence rates. Now, this is just first-year students, and as you can see on this slide, 66.2% of our students persist. Now, that's not good enough for me. So whenever I see that, I want to know why. I want to drill down into why is it 62%? So looking further into the data, I can see that females tend to have a higher persistence rate than men. And honestly, I can courses over the course of my tenure in the community college system. My female students have tended to stay in my courses and persist through the courses and persist through the program. So thinking about a career in technical education, specifically in health sciences, we often see a lot more females in the programs than men, and we really would like to find a balance with that. Looking further into the data, we can see that minority groups, certain race and ethnic groups, have a lower persistence rate than non-minorities or white students. White students have a 70% persistence rate, and if you look collectively, white students, they have about a 60% average. Looking at this data and just pulling it together for an average, that is a huge problem in our system, and we need to learn how to address that in a fair, equitable, equal manner in order to ensure that all of our students have the same chances to progress as every student. And in our field, in clinical lab science, need more minorities in the healthcare system. That is something that we've always needed. So it just stands to reason that we really need to focus on how can we bring all of these numbers up in order to ensure everyone can have a chance to be successful in the program. Digging a little bit into the types of programs and courses in the community college system, we can see there's a significant increase in the progression of students in career and technical education courses. Stands to reason. These things are complicated, they're complex. Think of all of the knowledge base that has to go into mastering a 2-year program in surgical technology, or let's say radiography. Let's just auto mechanics. All of that, all of those skill sets are very complicated, and they are multi-tiered and complicated. The complexity varies based upon what it is. So there's a significant change. There's a significant difference between the persistence rate in arts and sciences and CTE programs. Not to say that the arts and sciences are not rigorous, they are, but the data shows that progression in the CTE is lower. So why is this important? Well, we just talked about it. Less than 70% of our students persist. We have significantly lower rates for specific student groups, which means we really need to drill down into the why behind that and implement purposeful and effective interventions. And then look at what we can do to bring up that rate for our career and technical training programs. So thinking a little bit in the same vein of first-year students, let's think about first-generation college students. And I am a first-generation college student, so I can really relate to some of these things. The data we just looked at was specific for our first-year students. So we saw some challenging numbers, but if you think about a first-generation student, they bring a lot of other things into the mix. Now, many of first-year students at the community college are first-generation college students, so we need to think about all of them as if they are first generation. Studies have indicated that there tends to be a much lower progression rate in first-generation college students than in their comparable peers who have parents who do have college degrees. They tend to have an increased stress and need for more emotional support because they might lack certain skills needed to navigate the college system. They might not have an effective support system beyond the college, and they don't know. So they might not have a knowledge of the college resources. So you have to keep all of these things in mind when you're interacting with your students and when you're teaching your students and providing feedback and everything that we do in order to ensure that we do everything we can to get them to that goal. So challenges for that first-year student: academic readiness. Are they ready? Are they academically ready to enter the world of higher education? And for some, that could be a challenge. Are they socially ready? Can they collaborate with their peers? How do they collaborate with their peers? Personal and financial obligations. And for me, this is one that I see a lot with my students. They have to make the choice between, do I pay my tuition? Do I pay my rent? Do I get gas? Do I get lunch to pay my tuition? And I often struggle to tell them, we do have resources in the college to help you, but if they don't know how to access them. So it's our job to help them find that path to student support services so that they can be successful and finish. And then that rich, accessible support system out of those services at the college. I think for most students, they lack a deep understanding of all of the resources that our system has and our colleges have to offer them. And so it's our job to as we can about those options so that we can lead them down the right path. So thinking about all of that data, what do we do with that data? So if you don't do anything with the data, there's no point in it. Data drives the whole process. It's very, very important. So thinking in the realm of complex learning, which we're looking at a complicated task right here, there are many pieces to this puzzle in order to get that. I'm guessing it is really not my expertise level. There are many, many parts of that process in order to get that circuit board created so that it is effective. Another example of something complicated that works on parts and a whole is the human body. So different components, different systems, different processes in our body that all work individually yet together in order for us to thrive and survive. So we are the whole, and each system is our parts constituent. And information technology, the use of a computer. I can't use Photoshop if I don't know how to navigate the basics of a computer system. All of these examples are kinds of complex learning environments or complex learning tasks that are comprised of multiple parts that come together as one whole to be a functional unit. So to define complex learning is the integration of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, coordinating qualitatively different constituent skills, and often transferring what was learned in school or training to daily life and work. And it's from 10 Steps to Complex Learning, Mirenbauer and Kirshner, and I highly recommend that book. If you look at this quote, we can see complex learning is the integration of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Those are our cognitive, our psychomotor, and our behavioral domains. And so looking at this, we can see that it's the synthesis of all of those domains in order to put skill sets together to create an applicable, authentic, relevant task in the real world, which is what we do in career and technical education programs and courses. So what's a whole task? I love the cake. The ultimate goal and the purpose of learning. So let's say, I'll use ours as an example, in medical lab technology and specifically in blood banking, the ultimate goal is to a compatible unit of blood into a patient, okay? That's the ultimate goal, that's the whole task. But in order to transfuse that unit safely, I have to put smaller in order to arrive at the whole task. And each of those tasks can be highly complicated and have a high degree of risk and impact to the patient. So the whole task is what is affecting the individual. But it's comprised of part tasks, which are vital. Any given one of the critical part tasks that is not mastered fully will not get the individual to reliable whole task application, which is the ultimate goal. So it's driven by, the part tasks are typically driven by the learning objectives of your course. So the learning objectives tell you what parts you need to put together in order to arrive at the purpose and aim of the intended outcome. And oftentimes these part tasks require a refined iteration process in order to arrive at mastery. This goes back to students don't realize that they can iterate, they become frustrated. And we're going to talk about a little bit about how we pull empathy into these complex tasks to help them understand that iteration is required. So how does this all connect? How does all of this data, complex learning, and empathy all connect? So the complex topics require a higher degree of rigor. Imagine if my students did not demonstrate adequate competency to transfuse a compatible unit of blood in a patient. The outcome would be disastrous for a patient. And we don't want that, obviously. So these complex topics require us to teach in a more rigorous manner, require us to expect a lot out of our students. Oftentimes, students in these courses, it's the first time they've encountered something this rigorous, and they really are at a loss as to how to navigate it. So that it's really important to be aware in this situation so that you can intervene individually as needed. With increased rigor, creates an increased challenge to the student and a challenging learning experience. And for those first-year students, specifically those first-generation graduates who may have never experienced something this rigorous, they may become frustrated. They may become despondent. They may think that they can't succeed. Therefore, they need to change career paths. And it's our job to see that happen and intervene so that they can understand it's not the topic necessarily that is causing them frustration. It's their learning how to navigate through the topic and understanding that there are situations and strategies they can implement themselves to help them reduce this frustration. And we don't want this. We don't want a frustrated student just falling out and saying, I can't do it. And we all have them every semester. I have one today, and I'm doing everything that I can to help her understand she can progress to the third semester of our program. But we all have this, and we don't want this because this impacts their success in our courses, and they start to think, I don't know if I can do it. This is where empathy comes into play. And this is what is important to understand between the knowledge base of the historical data, knowing where we came from, knowing where we want to go, and understanding that we have students who do not know how to navigate this type of rigorous coursework. We have to employ highly empathic learning strategies in order to persist through our courses and ultimately to the ends of our program. Okay, so rate your degree of agreement or disagreement with each statement. And as you rate this, you're going to see on the screen where you're going to see an average of your opinions. So strongly disagree is on your left, rate is on your right. So we've got 4 statements here. All students struggle academically during their first year of college. All students share the same academic disparities during their first year of college. Paying attention to persistence rates does little to aid classroom instruction. And all students encounter situations that can impact their academic persistence. So take about a minute and rate your agreement or your disagreement with each statement. And we can see we have consensus on some things. All students struggle academically. Not all students. It depends a lot on the preparation students have during their secondary education. And we know that is drastically different depending on where the students come from during their high school, or if they had a high school career. We have to take that into account when we're working with students. Not all students will struggle, but a good majority of them will. All students are the same, have the same academic disparities during their first year. They definitely don't. There's a huge, there's a large body of research on disparities during the first year of college, and it does vary. But it is specific when you look at the different race and ethnic groups as far as specific disparities that might align with that. So there are, the disparities vary greatly between groups. Paying attention to persistence rates does little to aid classroom instruction. It actually helps a lot, especially when you're looking at historical data over time to see where you need to drill down into your program. So in our programs in health science, we have to keep a very vast repository of historical data, and we go back and examine it over time so that we can find areas of improvement for our programs. We're often required to do that for our individual accrediting bodies, and it's very important in looking at student retention. So we can also look at our specific student data, historical data, to see where they personally may have struggled. And all students encounter situations that impact their academic persistence. That is absolutely true, and that is the heart of why we're here. So let's talk about some empathic teaching and learning practices that we can implement in our instructional design so that we can hopefully and drive those numbers, those retention numbers up. So there are steps to integrate empathy within your instruction. One, you've got to understand empathy. And empathy, before I thought it was just me feeling what the other felt. Empathy is much deeper than that. Understanding social and emotional learning, we often call that SEL. You hear this a lot in secondary education. I haven't heard it as much in post-secondary, although there is a body of research on it. But there's a lot of work being done in K-12 on SEL. So that's coming to us, and we need to be prepared Generate unique, highly relevant, engaging learning experiences. So we need to know what empathy is, what type of empathy. We need to understand SEL, and we need to then take that information and generate relevancy for our students so that they connect with the experience. So cognitive empathy is a desire to understand the situation from another's perspective. So before I walk in your shoes, I really need to want to walk in your shoes. That's essentially the first step. I need to have a desire to understand more about your perspective. Emotional empathy is saying, I have walked in your shoes. I know what it's like to have to choose between paying rent and paying tuition. I understand. And oftentimes, this connects you as an instructor to your students more than anything. What I have learned in your tenure is that when I wear it on my sleeve, students look at me and think, wow, you really are just like us. And that does more to create an authentic, relevant learning environment in my classroom than anything I have ever done. So the emotional empathy is saying, I have experienced this. I know what this feels like. I may not know exactly what it feels like for you, but I know what it felt like for me. Passionate empathy is where I say, you know what, this is what I want to do. We're all in this, all striving for the same goal, and let's work together to get this done. This is standing alongside of your students throughout the whole process, saying, you're not alone, you're right here, and I'm going to help you through it. So let's answer a couple questions. I know what it's like. I also specifically quadratic equations. If I say that to my students, is that cognitive, emotional empathy, or compassionate empathy? I know what it's like. I also struggle with math, specifically quadratic equations. I think I may have said this before in class. Yes, it's emotional empathy. So you are saying that you have experienced it. You know what it feels like. And when you tell them that, they automatically, whether they consciously or unconsciously realize it or not, they have a little bit of stress and anxiety removed because they know you connect with their struggle. And that is huge. That is significant. That is one of the best ways to demonstrate empathy in anything you design for your classroom, or whether it's inside or outside of your classroom. I have struggled with the same topic. I have resources that helped me learn it. I can share if you want. Cognitive, emotional, or compassion. I have struggled with the same topic, and I have resources that helped me learn it. I can share if you want. Okay, I can see why we would say emotional, absolutely, because you've said you've struggled with it. Saying that you have to help them is aligning yourself beside them to support them to mastery. So you're saying, I'm going to walk with you. So it's a aspect of compassionate empathy, although it requires all three. It requires all three. It requires you wanting to do it, knowing how it felt, and engaging yourself in the process. So technically, we could say that it could be all three. I look more compassionate because of the sharing piece, but there's argument that you could argue all day that understanding where the student is at is all to engage and wanting to share. So great. So a little bit about SEL and the program, this presentation in SEL, but I wanted to bring it up because it does align to the empathic perspective of instructional design. So when we're talking about SEL, we're talking about learning that helps the student focus on intrapersonal and interpersonal skills that will help them not only in your class, but in life. So often that includes self-awareness, being cognizant of your behavior, respect for others, social awareness, knowing what's going on around you, being aware to it, being aware to the impact of it, your responsibility as a student, and then empathy. So for social and emotional learning, it's really important as an instructor that you not only teach from this perspective, but that you integrate these skills so that your students can practice this. Because my generation was not taught social and emotional learning. I was not taught how to manage the stress and balance work and life and balance school and work. I was not purposefully, I feel like I learned it over time, but the way students are taught in post-secondary now, oftentimes, not exclusively, they're taught strategies on how to mitigate the risk of not engaging in respect, social awareness, and responsibility. So some of our learners may have these skills and some may not. But SEL promotes a very positive and respectful relationship building experiences, and it connects individuals to each other, which helps them build their own learning community. So in order to engage in a learning community, you really need to know how to behave and participate in a learning community. Respect for others' opinions, inclusion, the welcoming of diversity and the diverse perspectives, and just that real, the information that you share with others can really impact the group and beyond. So when we're talking about the integration of empathy, we want to make sure that we take into account the social and emotional of it, because it helps us select strategies that promote mindfulness and perspective. And I like to say mindfulness first, because oftentimes we perspective and we say, okay, I can see it from your perspective, but can you really? So the mindfulness really helps you as an individual and a student think about the implications and the impact of what you're engaging in. It might actually hone your perspective and even adjust it and change it in a positive manner. The integration of stress management activities is huge. My students, lots of times you see students in these CTE fields max out. They are just stressed to the max. So teaching with stress management techniques and skills is critically important. So even within your assessment, the types of assessment, you can integrate stress management into them by adjusting their rigor, providing choice, and we're going to go over a few of these in a little bit, and just simply telling brain break, step back. We also want to show them what engagement in purposeful collaborative reflection looks like. So reflection is very important, and reflection helps refine those tasks that are complex. So if wrong this time, don't just go try it again. Think about what went wrong and go forward. Now, students don't typically come to your courses to do that. So you really have to teach them those skills along the way. So how do we create empathic instruction, and what are some heuristics that we can actually pull out of our magic hat and help our students? So the first thing is student perspective. And I'll look at this from empathy lens, meaning that I want to understand what you're going through. The student perspective helps us autonomy and decision making. I want my students to own their learning. I want them to teach themselves with myself as a guide and a facilitator. The establishment of flexibility in lecture attendance and personalization, that the students can actually customize their work that works best for them. So an example of this high flex course delivery model. I teach with a high flex model. This allows my students to choose and lecture. And how does this impact retention rates? Well, historically, most of our health science programs have been face-to-face, on campus, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. That excludes a lot of people who have to work during the week, during the day. And I said, okay, so in a high flex model, you teach in class face-to-face, you actually and allow your students to watch you teach via your LMS, you record that, and then you share it with the entire class so that students who can't attend face-to-face or live online can actually still watch the exact same lecture that everyone else has watched. This is so critically important. such rich feedback from my students telling me I could never take this program before because I have to work. And we know that priorities are paramount, right? We know that you've got to do Maslow before you do Bloom, period. Security, you've got to have Maslow before Bloom. In order to have Maslow, you oftentimes have to work, right? Because it takes money to have a roof over your head and food on the table. So our students have to choose. I totally understand it. So why can't we do just a little bit of tweaking and give them a high flex model? This is one of the best choices I have ever made as a teacher, because my students are like, thank you so much. I've been wanting this so bad. This helps promote retention. This helps promote persistence in all of our student groups, because they can say, you know what, I need to come to class this week, but next week I've got something that's going on Monday. Log in later in the day. And you structure your instructional strategies and your follow-up feedback for each course so that the students can prove that they engaged in the course. But it provides flexibility and it gives them more autonomy over their learning experience. Allow for mistakes. So I encourage mistakes in my class. In fact, I design mistake-based problem-based learning experience. Deliberately mess up, because it's just as important to know what not to do in a complex learning situation as it is to know what to do. This teaches troubleshooting and problem resolution in an indirect path. Encourage trial and error. Integrate non-punitive formative assessment. Give them a bunch of quizzes, but don't grade them. I mean, just give them, let them practice. Teach and encourage and allow for refinement. You have got to show them how to reflect on practice and refine it. Repeat. It's a continuous cycle of quality improvement, and we need to integrate that into everything we do. Show them that you too make mistakes. When you show them that you make mistakes and that you are real, they connect with you more and they trust you more readily. So refinement, this is what I call it: ungraded quizzes, low stakes, high impact. After every lecture, my students get about a 5 to 10 question quiz, depending on what the lecture is. It's ungraded. They're required to take it, but knowing that if they bomb it, it does not negatively impact their end grade, helps them see, hey, I'm really here to learn this information, not to get the A, not to get the B. So that low stakes gives them a secure environment to make a mistake and learn from it. Assessment revision is important. I learned a long time ago that I get a lot of bang for my buck by allowing my students to look at their graded assessments for units and revise them in a structured format. So they actually get feedback from me on the entire assessment, and they get the choice to revise it. I do this for every student. Even the student who made a 99 on the test gets the same option as the student who made the 9. And they are provided a template where they have to go in and explain why they got the question wrong, what the right question is, and why the other questions are not the correct answer. They appreciate this, and what I have heard from them, the feedback that I've gotten, is that it helps them learn the material better, and that's my ultimate goal. And then performance improvement reports. So students who score below a certain threshold in any of my classes, they are required to attend face-to-face classes. Now, if they can't attend face-to-face classes, we have to find a route for them, but I give them a midterm performance improvement from just my courses, each course, so they know where they're at and where they're going. It's kind of like a roadmap to get to course end, and I give them strategies on how to improve performance, whether it be time management, whether it be iteration and revision. I give them aligned strategies to help them improve the second half of the course. Competency-based assessments are significantly important. This does also promote student autonomy, holds students accountable to the task that they have to master in the course, allows them to see where their should be made, and lets them plan for iteration to mastery. This is what we do in healthcare for complex tasks, and it requires a lot of feedback from the instructor. In healthcare, when we work in the hospital, usually the first 90 days of onboarding is full of competency-based assessments in the form of performance checklists. And in the performance checklist, what we do is we are presented that information at the beginning of the job. So in my classes, my students are presented these performance checklists at the beginning of the semester and in the syllabus. And in this checklist, everything that they need to master by the end of the course is listed. And they can score a not met, a needs improvement, a met, or exceeds on this. So there's not a letter grade or numeric grade associated with their performance. It's truly evaluation of their ability to complete the complex task, whether it be the part task or the whole task. Now, in healthcare, most of our tasks are whole tasks comprised of a lot of parts. So it takes a significant amount of time to refine that skill set. Why would we expect our students not to have the same opportunity in our classes? So we scaffold these part tasks from least complex to most, and we provide students clear instruction on how to use these performance checklists. So when they're ready to demonstrate their set, they let me know. And if they need improvement, I mark needs improvement, document what needs to be done, let them try again. The only way they can master a topic and a concept and a skill set is to practice it. It's got to be purposefully practiced. So we need to integrate that into our instruction, purposeful practice, and those based performance checklists can actually help do that. Collaboration through accountability. So this is what I like to call a very safe peer-based relationship between students. It encourages reflection, discussion, review, studying, and aligned support. And this does not come in the form, okay? This comes in the form of those truly authentic, relevant relationships that are built courses. And you see these evolve starting in the first semester of any CTE program. So generally you have groups of students that gravitate to each other either based upon previous experiences, need, locale, what have you. But what they do is a group-based learning experience or a one-on-one based learning experience. And that evolves into a community practice. So in my classes, I have multiple communities of practice surrounding the given course purpose going on at any time. And so when we engage in discussion based on any given skill set that we're learning, we get different perspectives from each group. So these communities of practice are very focused and they're very relevant to the course. You can create these as an instructor from the beginning of class, or you can let them evolve naturally. I personally like to let them evolve naturally and facilitate their growth going through the class, because when students are forced into a box, they don't do as well as if they are allowed to grow into their. Okay, so let's give this a try. All right, which of the following examples would best demonstrate mastery of a highly technical, complex learning objective? Ungraded performance checklist as a final exam, or online closed group for discussion? Which one would demonstrate mastery of a highly technical, complex learning objective? Like the example in our picture, if you can, surgeons there. Ungraded quizzes, performance checklist as a final exam, or online closed group for discussion. Okay, absolutely. So that performance checklist cannot be overly stated, because as long as the instructor is equitably and equally grading that checklist for each student and providing the same level of feedback for each student, that performance checklist is going to be much better at proving the student has mastered the complex skill than a multiple choice test can. A number of students may know the theory, but can they apply the theory in the real world? And if that's the intent of the course and the program, then the performance checklist is really the way to go for a final assessment. For the single parent returning, which of the following would benefit them most and encourage autonomy? Choose a program in the evening, choosing the mode of lecture attendance, not having assignment due dates. So for the single parent returning to college, which of the following would benefit them most and encourage autonomy? Choose a program in the evening, choosing the mode of lecture attendance, or not having assignment due dates. Lecture attendance. So that high flex course model, we have seen, there's a lot of studies. Brian Beatty is one of the main researchers for the high flex model. And there's a lot of research around the impact of that high flex course model to promote student retention and persistence, because it gives the student choice, gives the student more control. Not having assignment due dates, I do that. I do that as well. I provide due dates for the students who need them and allow the students who don't need them the option. And there's not a lot of research around that right now, and I'm kind of on the fence of its efficacy. Look into that in the future, but the high flex course model is definitely something that we need to do in community college system. A student states they need to attend a family need. Choose the best advice to give them regarding your course. Make sure you keep up with the coursework. I do not extend due dates. How can I help you regarding your coursework? How can I help you during this time? What would be the best advice to give in your course? And granted, these are not objective, they're subjective, so you may have a different perspective, and I can respect that. How can I help you during this? Yes, what that does is that opens up not only your class and your program and your division, it opens up the college to the student. So if the student says, you know what, I can't pay my electric bill this month, you do is you offer them assistance on trying to find out ways if there's something to help them. So definitely you want to help them regarding the course. No doubt about that at all. But we want to extend that beyond our own realm into what other needs, because they might not need help with the coursework. They might need help with other things. And that's why we have the rich student support services that we do in the system. Okay, that's it for the session. If you're interested, feel free to contact me at any time. I do research in empathic instructional design and in communities of practice, specifically in career and technical education. And so I welcome any feedback that you have on this. And if you would like any information or references, don't hesitate to contact me at any time. And I really thank you for attending this session. And I'm very thankful to have been a part of this summit. Thank you.